You have to remember that presentation it's almost like, think of when you go and you buy a product. It's really beautiful, but when you open it up, you realize it was made really cheaply in China. But you were seduced by the packaging. And that's really what we're talking about, is having the other person seduced by what you're going to show. So what do you think would be a way to start?
The box.
A box, yes. Thinking about how you're going to put this into one thing. So one way might be just using the old standard Lincoln Hines portfolio mix. This is a joke. But there is no standard way. Meaning, what is good for me is not going to be good for you, or you, or you. You have to develop a portfolio that is custom made to house your work the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how different people have used different formats. Meaning you don't have to use a standard format. So this is one format. It might work for you. It's the old-fashioned, but there are newer forms of this where you slide your work into it and you showcase your work. So that's one way. Another standard way is a lot of photographers or artists, what they do is they document their photographs, or they photograph their three-dimensional work, and they put it in a box in an art case like this, like a museum art case. And all of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this format, okay? Or there's this format, where the previous one where they were loose, but here you can develop a system where it is a book and they're flipping, okay? Now we get into something a little bit more fancy, where we start custom making. There are many places within the city where you can go and have a custom box made, from leather to fabric, whatever you want. You go there, they make it to your size format and however you want. And the other thing is, you could have one thing made, a box made from one supplier, and then your actual book or your elements done somewhere else. It's up to you. Now, some people, what they do is they find, and I've seen people do this, they find an interesting box. So I've seen people go to the market at St. Lawrence on Antique Day, and they buy an old-fashioned luggage box, and they use that as their portfolio. So that's another method. Basically, what I'm saying is, you have to look at your work and think, what would be an interesting way to house your work, okay? So here, now a lot of people feel that black is the standard, okay? So they want to make their portfolio black. It has to be black. Well, I would see portfolios when I was working. I'd see a lot of photographer portfolios. And the one thing is, because I see so many, and if everything is black, it all becomes a blur. So if you walked in and you showed me something with a little bit of color, then what do you think that does? What do you think it does? It makes it stand out. And what you want to do is you want to stand out, right? You want something about your work to stand out in the way that you present. So this is another method where someone has made a box, and then they've made a book, and the book slides in. So it no longer is using standard forms of books that you can find. You're actually building the book yourself. This is another method. It's a screw method. So basically what happens is your book is there's a punch hole system where you punch all the pages of your book, and then you can remove things easily, and it's no longer in a plastic sleeve. So that's another method that you can use. And different companies have different size formats, and you can choose the size format that you want. The one thing that I would recommend is that you choose something that isn't that big, meaning something something no bigger than 17 inches by 12 inches, because the problem is the weight, okay? Now here, someone has gone to the expense of having their a book made, and it's made out of plastic, and they've laser cut their logo into the plastic, okay? And then they have a mechanism system of placing the work inside. Here's another way where someone has made a portfolio case on their own, and they found an interesting way of closing it. Rather than it being square, it's far more impressive that it's a bit unique. So 2 circle flaps that fit into each other, and then it's open. This is a different system where what this is, you might not understand, is these are envelopes that are in the book. And in each envelope, there is a series of photographs. So meaning, if you have different series of work that you want to show, you could then put 5 cards in each one. And each one is a taste of a series of work that you've done. So for example, in the first envelope, you could have done a robot series or some sort of, and you can show, showcase that piece of work that you photographed in that, and then in the next one, something else, and so on, all right? That's another method of doing this. What's really good about that, and I'm sort of going to jump ahead because I have a slide. The other thing that's really easy now, which I didn't have when I was working, is you have places that can print out limited edition of postcards. And basically what you can do is on the previous one, you can go and show them this. And they say they really like it, and they ask, can I have this? So this could be a standard postcard size. And you put in five pieces of your work in there, and then you leave it with them. So you take up the 5 and you leave it with them, and they have a copy of your work, so that when they want to remember you, or when they think of using you or wanting to have you exhibit or want to hire you, they will remember you by something. And so, you know, there are places like Ad Factor that you can print out 1,000 for, I think, $99 or $79, something ridiculous like that. And what you can do is print out your work where on one side it's full color laminated, and then on the other side there's an explanation of your work. It's just one color. So one color is one side is 4 colors, and the other side is 1 color, which is black. And what they do is, the way that they can offer you this is that they print a whole bunch of people's work at one time, and then they can give it to you at that reduced rate, right? So that's something you can do. Now as well, there's a place online called Moo. Moo is a business card printer, and basically you can print all your business cards different, meaning every card you have, you can do up to 10, I believe. On each card, there can be a different piece of your work. So on one side, you're showcasing your work, 10 different pieces, and then on the other side is your information, right? So what you can do is you can go and give them 5 of your business cards, and they have a little sort of memory thing of your work. All right. Now, here, this is far more excessive. Many people, I taught a course here a number of years ago, maybe could be even 10 to 13 years ago. And I had students build a portfolio. And one girl in photo did something really quite amazing. She went out and she found a glass, not a glass, but a plastic box. She then went to the antique market and she bought one, and I don't know, maybe someone here will know the official name. Remember those old-fashioned things where you would hold and you could put a card, there were two pictures in them, and you some sort of a scope. It was old-fashioned from the turn of the 19th century. And what she'd do is she'd make these cards, and there would be the same picture to them on one card, and then you put it in this device, and that's how you looked at her work. It was actually quite impressive. And I'm sure that when she went to see you could look at her work just like that, but it was interesting to be able to hold the device and put her work in. It was like really old, it was an antique, and you could look at her work. So there are many different ways of presenting your work. Again, you don't use the deck and hide just because your friend beside you went out and bought a black portfolio. You're going to do the same thing. To her work, it was sort of, it suited that sort of aesthetic. Here, I guess this person did landscapes, so he went out, got a portfolio, and then had it etched into the portfolio. And then this is inside of the portfolio. Okay? So you can see there's a whole sort of mystique quality about the work. Another version, someone making a box, then a portfolio book, and then a smaller portfolio. Because sometimes photographers might show larger prints and then show smaller prints. Don't be scared of color. Okay. And then this is really, I wanted to show you getting little postcards printed. And what's really good about this is that the one thing that I remember someone told me is once you go see someone, in the past, you would have to call them 6 months or 4 months after you saw them, because you have to refresh people's memory that you were around. One way is to create a website, and what you do is you ask for their email. So this is what you do today. What we had to do is we had to call them. What I did was I used to send them a postcard, and the postcard wasn't a phone call because people can get annoyed when you call them. So today, rather than do that, something far more inexpensive would be to drop them an email with a link saying, I just updated my website, go take a look. And if you did that maybe 3 times a year, people would be reminded of you, because sometimes people just fall off the face of the earth. Right? So, and you have to remember, they are being bombarded by many people, and you want to make sure that they remember you, okay? And you're persistent and you're professional. So another way would be to send them a postcard. So I included this. Now, I do not show my work that way anymore. I create presentations. It's different. Everyone chooses a new way. So now what I do is I might show my work on a portfolio, but actually I don't practice anymore, so I don't do this anymore. And this is the last portfolio I ever made. Today, actually, and after a while, I never had to show a portfolio because you get return business, and then people recommend you, they see your work, and then this is not an issue anymore. It's not like you have to go out anymore. But some of you might consider the iPad, because some of your work can't be seen as a print. Some of you might, even in photo, you might do mini GIFs. You might do little animations. So you need to show your work here. So what this person did was they built a portfolio and they slid iPad into it. So at least it had a personal quality to it. And then here's someone made a slide box. So it would come out of something. At least it was personal. Right? Here's something else. Here someone created a kit folder. And so basically what you could do is the middle flap can be samples of your work that you slide in. And then on the side, you just stick on one of those holders for a CD or a DVD, and you slip your work on that, and then you might leave this package, or you might just leave them the DVD or CD. That's another way. Everyone has to find their own way to best suit their work. Here's another sort of, what I thought was interesting about this is the portfolio was a printed book and a number of small printed objects. So things that they would leave behind, okay? And then here's a more fancy sort of book where they cut out of the slide box to sort of unveil what was underneath. So again, this is all about presentation and making an impression. So the next big thing you got to do is create a way of identifying yourself with a business card and then with other supportive material. Because if you're going to correspond with these people, you want to appear professional. So really, you got to think of all the interesting things you could do. So for example, you might think of the way you leave something to someone is you might go out and buy these generic bags and then put a couple of prints in there and leave it with them. You got to think of unique, fun ways, like when it will really impress them that you thought through the way you're leaving a package, like not in a brown 9 by 12 envelope, like boring. Okay? So you want to be impressive, where you're putting your work in creative objects and the way that you leave them. So I've just thrown some things on here, and there are many things you can buy. So for example, you could find online really cheap little boxes and put your business card in a matchbox and then create a sticker and make it unique and leave that with them. Like there are hundreds of things you can find and do, all right? So really, when you do that, so this is just an identity, right? So the thing on the right. And then the way this is applied to everything you do. So do you see how this has a look? It has a representation of someone. It's like something has been thought through. They look professional, and it's making an impression. So as simple as it is, it's making an impression. Okay, so when you're creating a stationery program, you need to think of one, a letterhead. So what is on the letterhead? The letterhead has your mark. Now I'm going to talk about the two types of marks. You can have a logo, which all of you you're familiar with, or you can have a word mark. A word mark is different, and I'll show you the difference. It is type-based, meaning it's a complete printed word. A logo is basically a symbol, an icon, okay? And then you would have your information, your name, your address, your telephone number, and your email information, okay? Then you'll have a second sheet. Why do you need a second sheet? Well, a second sheet is sometimes your letter is going to be longer than just one page. The second sheet houses your logo, and that's it. Meaning your information, your address, all that does not appear on the second sheet. Only your logo. Because it becomes too much. It's still identifiable as your page, but you do not include any of your information like address and therefore. So for example, you might write a proposal to a gallery of what you're wanting to do. So the first sheet would be an introduction, and then the second, third, fourth, and fifth would have your logo, and that's it. Then all the typewritten information. That is how professionals work. They don't keep blasting their address on every page after that. It's understood that with your logo on there, that is all your document. Okay? Yeah?
Do people really actually read hard copy letters anymore?
You'd be very surprised that when you're making a proposal, that sometimes, even if you're doing it digitally, you would do it this way. You want it to look formal. You're not just going to put it in a Word document. Like, it's just not professional. So you have to identify yourself. So if you sent them a PDF of this letter, it would have your logo, your address, and then the second sheet would just be your logo, and then it would be spelled out. And if they had to print it, because what would happen is, if you're making a proposal to a gallery, and they shortlist 5 of you, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to have a meeting, maybe 3 of them in the boardroom, and they're going to print out everybody's, so that they can pass them around and read them. For example, we have meetings here. We email each other, but then when we meet in the meeting, we print them out because we can pass them around. So you still will have to do this. It depends. Some places will accept the email. Some places might ask you for a formal. And I'm going to talk about that because I have ways of suggesting to you to really, at this point, for you to cut costs. Okay? So you'll need a second sheet. You'll need an envelope. You'll need a business card. And the most important thing you'll need is a label, because the label has multiple uses, and I'll explain how you can use them. And a kit folder, and some of you might need a CD, DVD of your work, right? So you'll need to make a label, something like that. Okay, so there is standard, 8.5, 11, standard envelope, and a standard business card. And these, I've written the dimensions there, and because I'm blind, I can't see. So it's the standard number 10. The size 8.5, 11 is North American. European use A formats. You might like an A format. They're different size, up to you. And then business card. Really today you can do any size. But the problem, a lot of people like European business cards. European business cards are really big, like that size. The problem with that is people put your business card in a standard format object. So they might have a box that they put your business card, or they might have a sleeve little book that they bought at Staples or whatever. So if your business card does not fit in, that, I'm telling you, that is just going to be put in a drawer and somehow will be lost. So you have to keep to the standard size. Okay, so going back to creating a logo or a word mark. So a logo, when we refer to it, is a symbol of letters or a visual. It can be a visual. It doesn't have to be a letter. So for example, if some of you do robotics, you might just do a digital movement, a visual interpretation. That's okay. And then the word mark. Now, many times the logo does accompany a word mark as well. So sometimes you have the word mark all on its own, and then sometimes you have the logo on its own, but then sometimes you have the logo and the word mark together. Okay? The word mark does not have to, when you're doing the two of them, the word mark does not have to be so designed. It can be very simple. It can just be a font. Okay, so I would then look at my my name, or if I decided to make up a company, that's up to you. I would decide what I want to do, and then the next step I would do is I would do what I call a casting. I would look at the fonts in different formats and decide what best represents me. Like, do I feel comfortable representing who I am in number 1, number 2, number 3, or with the type number 1, number 2, number 3. Now what I was going to do, I was going to show you how you can manipulate the fonts, because many times a lot of you don't realize, even though you get these fonts, in Illustrator you can convert them to an outline, and then what you can do is you can modify them so that you can make the font look totally your own. So that's what many of the companies do. They find the font and then they modify it. So what people try to do is they try to do what is called something that is semantic. They try to make the type into a visual. So here it's really clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to represent something. So type can be visual. It doesn't always have to be literal. So for example, in the logo of Skype, Skype looks like a cloud, meaning that you're talking through air. So that is the symbolism of that. So here I've just shown you what some people have done with type, meaning they've either taken letters and they've made a monogram, or they've made a logo, or they've made what is called a word mark. So in the thread, one letter does something, or one letter is different. Or now, because of the advantage of Photoshop, you can actually modify fonts to photographic aesthetic. So that one represents movement. So here, just showing you different interpretations of how people have used fonts. So here, this was a letter font where they just removed the crossbar in the letter A to make it more unique. So it really was unique to this company. Okay? And also what's interesting is you notice that here the type is white on a black plane because there's an elegance to them, and they thought about that. So whenever they would reproduce their work, it was always on a dark background or a colored background, and their word mark was white. They made a conscious decision that that's what it would be. Okay, so I showed this. So basically, there are standards here in Canada, and I believe they still are in practice. So what they are is if you have an envelope, in Canada, the only thing you can do is I believe it's 3 it's 3/4 of an inch, and then a 1/2 inch on the bottom, that you cannot have anything printed. And the reason for that is 1, the stamp, and 2, the barcode that they place when the mail is processed. So, you can't get away with it because some people are only sending 1 or 2 pieces of mail. So, for example, it's not going to be an issue. But if you did a mass mailing, they would send your stuff back. So when you design here in Canada, you can always check the postal service, but I'm pretty sure it's still a standard. You cannot print anything on the bottom or on the side of the stamp. But you can print anywhere else, and you can print all over the back. So I used to design envelopes where the back flap was printed. And so that opens up options for you. Okay? So here I'm just showing people choosing fonts that best represent them. So this is really old-fashioned. They wanted this sort of aesthetic. And sometimes, you know, depending on you, your work might be very modern, but you counter it off with something very traditional. So here are just 2 versions of the same logo. One just on a white plane, one within a shape. And a lot of people do this. They'll have their logo or word mark plain, and then they make a device, whether it's a square, a triangle, a circle, and they might turn that into a sticker. And they might just stick that when they're mailing something on the back. You know, when you fold something up, you might just put it on the back just to make it look professional. And a lot of you have gone shopping. You all go into these fancy shops where they do fancy little things, and you should pick up on something. If you see something that you like a store has done, then you might want to incorporate it in the way that you package and present yourself. So here's just more, basically it's a standard font, but they extended the T, and that's something really easy you can do in Illustrator. And then there, what they did is they, again, semantically interpreted the word. So I was talking about labels. Labels are going to be a money saver, because when you send something off, whether it's a tube, an envelope, a box, you can make that package look like it's yours by just printing out a label. And a label you can make labels in different sizes so that they appear appropriate, and you would decide how you place the label on the package that is leaving your studio. Now, the other thing, and I don't know if I have that, is a kit folder. Many times, the most expensive thing to print is a kit folder. It's like a fortune. But what you can do is you can go to Staples, buy a simple white, or sometimes they have various colors, print out a label, and just design the label in a way that you can stick it on the kit folder, and you've saved yourself thousands of dollars. You have no idea how expensive to print out 1,000 kit folders, especially with your identity on it. It's like $15,000 because they have to print and die cut it out. So it's very expensive option. So you might want to put all your work, or when you're making a proposal, and place it all in a kit folder. That would be a very inexpensive way. The other thing is that someone asked me about, do people read paper? Well, if you're going to print out your stationery, another thing to do is you can design your stationery, take it to a printer, and they will professionally print it for you. on special paper that you choose. But what I would suggest for everyone, especially at this point in your careers, is go to Staples. They have many different stocks of paper. Pick the paper you want. Most of you have inexpensive printers, and then just print out your letters off of your own printer. You can also print your envelopes that way. The only thing you would need to print professionally would be your business card and a label. And other than that, you would be okay. There would be great cost savings to this, and you would still appear as professional as someone who had something to do with it. So these are just examples of how, some people go out, they design their stationery, and it's just on white paper. They print their business card yellow, and then they source out a yellow envelope. They look, so basically it looks like they spent money, but they really just simply, by good management, they've made something look expensive when it was really inexpensive. So here you can do something simply black and white. It's just making wise decisions. So you can see up there their CD or DVD CD where their label they made. So it really does make their identity whole. And what's really interesting about this one is notice that their logo is a letter F, but every F is a different font. So meaning you don't have to be standard. You can still make something look standard, but be creative about it. And here's another example. This is a kit folder. Oops. So others examples of so these are just showing you examples of different people's, and really, like I said, the business card has to be the thing that is really the star, because that's what I used to call that is the way you shake someone's hand, and that has to make an impression. I used to, whenever I designed a business card for someone, it was never white, because when you put a white card on a table, it's like it's blank. But when you put a card that is a solid color, no matter what color it is, it's going to stand out. So to me, that business card up there, I just liked it because it's standard, but it's really blank. And then here, they wanted to make it look antique. So they used elements like craft, envelope, string, twine. So these are all things that you can incorporate. So this is a really dynamic thing someone did, photographer. See, something simple as one color can really be dynamic as well. See there on the back of the envelope, they've printed the back label. Okay, so this is, we're at the end. I don't want to bore you.